Hey everybody, RPG here. Today I'm going to show you how to fix your arcade controls when using USB encoders on an arcade setup. So right behind me I have my arcade setup. This is a 2-player setup. It runs off of a Raspberry Pi 4 running RetroPie. Each of the players' controls actually go through USB encoders, and then that gets connected directly to the Raspberry Pi 4. So this is a standard setup. This is what most people have when they're using a Raspberry Pi 4 powered arcade. This is what you'd be using if you're also modifying an arcade 1-up cabinet. So pretty much the exact same setup regardless of which route you go. You can even use this with some other emulation platforms. It doesn't have to be specific to Raspberry Pi and RetroPie. So the issue a lot of people are having is they go through the initial mapping process, everything saves, they're able to navigate with both players through all the different collections and menus, but when they jump into a game, sometimes the controls are getting totally out of whack, and player 1's controls are actually powering the player 2 character in game. So let's take Tekken for example. Tekken's a fighting game, and let's say that player 1 goes to kick. They're seeing that on screen, player 2's character is kicking, and then they go to punch, and that one's working properly for the player 1 character. So we know that there's an issue where, a line's obviously crossed and the controls are just out of whack, and it's not always straightforward like that. Sometimes it could be as simple as, player 1 is hitting kick and it's kicking, and then all of a sudden it'll throw a kick for player 2. So it can just be a mixed signal in there that's just throwing everything off. But at the end of the day, it's totally unplayable like that. So the first thing a lot of people end up doing is they pop the control board, they take a look at all their wirings, and they see that all their wirings for player 1 are going to the player 1 encoder. Same thing with player 2. So then it becomes a frustrating experience because you don't know what's going on here. So I have the fix for you, and this is what the issue is 9 times out of 10. What ends up happening is people go through the process of mapping each individual button and joystick to their encoder, but with those encoders, there's a lot of slots on there. So it's really easy to put it in the wrong slot. And it doesn't matter which slot you go into as long as player 1 slots mirror player 2 slots. So I'm gonna show you exactly what I mean, because just taking my word for this and not having that visual aid to go along with it makes this really frustrating and kind of convoluted. So I get a lot of emails about this. I actually got 3 emails about this problem today alone. So that's what prompted me to jump on here and do this video. And when I'm responding to emails or messages or comments, and I'm trying to describe this issue, it's really hard to follow along. So I want to be able to show you what I'm talking about. So I'm going to pop open the controls here on my arcade setup, and I'm going to show you exactly what I'm talking about. All right, so I'm just going to lift up my control board here. Now I'll have access to all of my buttons, my joysticks, and my encoders, which are right here. Now you may have a different setup. If you have an arcade 1-up, your encoders might not be located directly below your control board. They might actually go through and be located in the back. So you just need to locate where your encoders are. And if you have access to everything in one field of view, that just makes it so much easier. So basically what we need to do is we need to take a look at our encoders. So this is player 1 right here. This is player 2. And we need to make sure that each button that goes from our control board for player 1 goes into the port on the encoder the exact same way that it does on player 2. So let's take our A button, for example. A is this blue button right here. It's impossible to follow these wires the way that they are right now, with the zip ties and everything, but I remember exactly how I did this, so I'm just going to describe it to you. This is my A button, and it goes through here and it connects right up into this corner port on my encoder. Now I have to make sure that the exact same function on player 2 does the exact same thing, and it does. It goes from here down here and it connects right up here in that top right corner. So you need to make sure that each of these functions from player 1 and player 2 come into the encoders the same way. So my B button's here, B button comes into the second one down, same exact thing over here on my player 2 encoder. If there's any discrepancies, meaning if my A button were to come down and go into the top port on my encoder here, and then on player 2 it came and it went into any other port, it's going to cause the issue that I'm describing in this video. It's going to cause player 1's controls in game to get rerouted at times to player 2, and it's just going to make these games unplayable. So we have to make sure that we go through this and make sure that everything connects the exact same way. Now it's super easy to make a mistake because obviously if we're just looking at the encoders here, everything looks pretty much exactly the same. So it's easy to drop down or, mix these up a little bit. So if you're experiencing this problem, first thing you want to do is obviously verify that all your controls from player one are going to the proper encoder and they're not, jumping over like that, but also that they're coming into their individual encoders the exact same way. So if I take a look at both of these side by side, all of the buttons are going to map to this the same way that they map to this. And I have no issues with it like that. As soon as there's any sort of discrepancy, it's going to cause issues throughout your entire system and make all these games totally unplayable. So if you're experiencing this issue, that's exactly what you want to check first. Just verify that all your connections are also tight as well. When we have kind of a mess, I would say, when we're putting all these together, that's why I use the zip ties, just to try to keep everything compact and, reduce the risk of snags or anything. But, it's still a mess with tons of wires under here. You just want to make sure that everything is also connected properly as well. But if you're having this exact issue, like I said, 9 times out of 10, it comes down to a discrepancy with the connections on the encoders. They have to match up and mirror each other 100%. All right, so that's going to do it for today. Hopefully this was done in a way that made it easy for you guys to follow along and really understand what I'm talking about in terms of the encoder for player one, matching up and mirroring the encoder for player number two. So if you have any questions at all, feel free to hit me up in the comment section below. I'm really easy to get a hold of, and I'm always happy to help out any way that I possibly can. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel because we do a whole bunch of different retro video game videos, either tutorials, gameplay demos, product reviews, just a little bit of everything on here. So definitely subscribe and definitely check us out online on our website, www.retropieguy.com. Thanks for watching.